Okay, so before I was diagnosed with Cauda-Equina syndrome, I was a single mum. I had two daughters. I was running my own business. I had two cars. I just met a new partner who lived in Ireland at the time, so I was flying backwards and forwards from Ireland, having a really good time. I was 39. I was very kind of fiercely independent and proud of what I've achieved at sort of looking after my daughters on my own. So yeah, everything was great. I had a great social life and I was merrily on my way, really, enjoying life. The first time I heard of Cauda-Equina syndrome was the night before I actually developed the full-blown syndrome. So I was Googling my symptoms from my back pain, leg pain, sciatica. And at the very end of a flow chart was a word called Cauda-Equina syndrome medical emergency. No other information from that. So during the night, my back went completely, my disc ruptured, and caused me to go into a full-blown Cauda-Equina syndrome. And it was that little bit of knowledge that then made me go back to the doctor and really push and go back to hospital once I was sent home, because I thought it said medical emergency, there's something going on here. That's the first time I heard of it. When I was diagnosed with CS, I sort of got to backtrack a couple of weeks. I'd already been for an MRI scan. I'd had that done at a private hospital through the Choose and Book system. I'd gone to my doctor with what I thought was hip pain. So we'd had an x-ray done on my hip, and which showed nothing, but then I was given an MRI scan. So this MRI scan was sat at a private hospital 2 weeks before I went into hospital as an emergency. During the night, about 3:30 in the night, I turned over in bed and my back went. So I had been having sciatic pain and leg pain that was becoming unbearable. I'd sought help from the doctor because I thought it was hip pain and I couldn't stand it anymore. And I just turned the wrong way in bed and that was it, my back went. So immediately I had a dense, heavy feeling in my buttocks. They felt like two sacks of potatoes on either side. And there was immediate pins and needles that was really strange. The pain paralysed me. I couldn't get up from the bed and I had to lie there, really. And I was with my partner at the time who rang 111. So I was telling 111 about my symptoms and they said, well, in the morning, go straight to your GP and get an appointment first thing. So my partner went to work the next morning. My daughter came round. And by this time, the pins and needles were subsiding. It was becoming more numb, the buttock area. I managed to go for a wee, importantly, beforehand, before I went to the doctor's. And it took me 20 minutes to get into her car and to get down to the GP because I was in so much pain. When I went to my GP, it was a doctor called Dr. White, who was an older doctor, close to retirement. And he said, I know immediately what you've got here. It's Cauda-Equina syndrome. And he did a kind of makeshift pinprick test with the end of his biro. And he said, just lie down there. Can you feel that, and that? And I couldn't. He said, yeah, you need to go to A&E immediately. I'm going to ring the orthopaedic on call at the local hospital and get you directly onto a ward to be assessed. So Dr. White rang the orthopaedic on call at the local hospital, who refused to see me. He said I couldn't possibly have Cauda-Equina syndrome because I'd walked into surgery and I was still able to ambulate. So there was an argument. I had heard both people arguing on the phone, which was a bit worrying and concerning to me as a patient listening to this. And the only thing Dr. White could do for me was get them to see me in the urgent care centre, which was a triage shed outside A&E. So this was about 10 o'clock in the morning. By 12 o'clock, I was at the urgent care centre being assessed. I went to the toilet at the time, and as I stood up from the toilet, I was still passing urine, but I had no sensation of that. And I actually thought, this is really strange. There's something, things are getting worse. And when I saw the nurse in the A&E department, in the triage department, she wrote that onto my notes, bladder dysfunction. A newly qualified junior doctor was assessing me. He was running backwards and forwards to the orthopaedic department, who still would come down to see me, doing this assessment, and had to discharge me and sent me home with some painkillers. So I went home and laid on the settee all afternoon. I was home alone. My partner was still at work, and my GP rang me about 5:30 to find out how things had gone on and what had gone on at the hospital. And I said, "Well, actually, Dr. White, I'm still here. They sent me home." And he said, I can't have this. I'm going to have to ring them back and get you back into A&E and get assessed. This is ridiculous. So he did do that, and they relented and agreed to see me in A&E this time. And I waited for my partner to come back for me at 7 o'clock, and we went back to A&E at the hospital. Once I got to the A&E department, my bladder now was doing really strange things. So where I'd stood up and I was still passing urine, when I was going to the toilet now, I can only describe it as trying to wee through the eye of a needle. The stream had completely reduced and it was really hard to pass urine at all. So things were deteriorating at that point. I had 4 anal sphincter tests, 4 different clinicians. I had pinprick tests done under a blanket so I couldn't see where they were sticking the needle in case I was making it up that I couldn't feel it. And it took them about 5 hours to decide that actually perhaps I need to go to Preston because I could have cauda equina syndrome. So eventually I was blue lighted there about 3 o'clock in the morning, sent for an MRI scan. And yes, you got cauda equina syndrome, but actually we don't want to do the surgery during the night, which is a fair comment. We want to do it first thing in the morning. So 8 o'clock comes and I think, right, I'm going to get surgery now. And that was still delayed till after lunchtime that day. And I think the most frustrating thing from my diagnosis was the MRI scan I had done 2 weeks earlier at the private hospital confirmed that I had cauda equina syndrome. And had somebody reported that, I would have probably had surgery a lot earlier and not been left with any permanent issues that I have now. So following my own injury, I was sort of discharged from hospital after 5 days with no information, no support, and nowhere to get information from. And I was urgently looking for information online, where I came across a Facebook support group. So there was about 60 people in that group at that time, and they were mainly from America. So a lot of the information I got from there. Because that was beneficial to me, I saw that actually was a greater need for this, and I set my own Facebook support group. So since 2012, we've had a Facebook support group that has 6,000 people in it now from all over the world, with cauda equina syndrome and the family members. And every day we have new people coming into the group. 75% of our membership is from the UK. It's 15 years this September from my own injury. We've been working to raise awareness of cauda equina syndrome and support patients in all that time. The charity's developed, but ultimately it's really frustrating because we see every week the same stories happening over and over again. People are being treated faster. There seems to be more cases being dealt with in 24 hours, which is fantastic. There are structures in place and the new pathway is working areas, but in other areas there does seem to have been an abandonment by some trusts of the pathway because they don't have the resources, or it's still not prioritised highly enough. So it's demoralising. It sometimes we think, what, are we getting anywhere with this? But I am honestly reassured that there are people working really hard to try and change things for patients. People in Girft and dedicated clinicians who are doing research and trying really hard in their local areas to improve their own local pathways. To summarise, really, it's frustrating. It means we can't stop doing what we're doing, and all we can do really is carry on building our services to support these people the best way that we can. When people join the group, they want people that have the delays. I'm still speaking to people who can be delayed at a district hospital waiting for a referral to a surgical centre to have surgery. They might be on a side ward for 5 days or a week. They might be asked for numerous scans. 1 scan's never enough, it seems. Some people sometimes are asked for 3 scans that week, although they already have the cauda equina diagnosis. There seems to be a little bit of reluctance from hospital transfers of cauda equina patients because who is like a hot potato who wants it. There can be delays there. There's delays. People sat in A&E, they're meant to, in the pathway, they're meant to be a triage and into MRI in 4 hours. I've spoken to people since the pathway's come out, and a lot of them who've sat there for 12 or 15 hours as back pain patients, and their red flag symptoms haven't been taken seriously. So yeah, there's still significant delays. And there seems to be a delay in the pathway where patients are sent, slow onset patients perhaps we might call them, are sent to physios. So they're not recognising acute onset within 14 days, but they might have had a slower progression of bladder deterioration. And these patients are sat there waiting for an MRI scan that's urgent within 2 weeks. Their scan results are coming back to the physios as scan positive, but nobody's contacting the patients to say, how are your symptoms, have you got worse? And these people are sat there and they're developing full-blown Cauda-Equina syndrome. And they shouldn't be there. They should have gone past the other room, A&E, and I think probably the scan at that time would have shown they had Cauda-Equina syndrome before they deteriorated further. So the pathway is great, but there is, I feel, this really grey area around the physio referrals. So when we created the idea for the Book of the Lost Tribe, the title came from a clinician, a spinal rehab consultant called Mr. Meckie at the Golden Jubilee Spinal Centre in Middlesbrough. And he was presenting for us for a recording that we're doing around Awareness Day during lockdown. And he described us as a group of patients as a lost tribe. So we were stranded on an island of the NHS services, and nobody was coming to rescue us. We were marooned with no help in sight, I think he said. And that really resonated with me. And obviously a lot of the patients who I speak to all the time feel the same way. So that was where the idea for the Lost Tribe came from. We are a community. We do see ourselves as a group of patients that support each other and have to, because there isn't enough support there for us. So we do act as a community. And from a charity point of view, community and patients are at the very core of what we do. I'm proud to be part of the Lost Tribe. I'm proud of the book. And I hope that it serves not only to educate healthcare professionals, but also to empower patients and feel that they're heard by telling their own stories. We have patients who join us every week in the Facebook support group, and I also answer calls on the helpline and call people back who make inquiries to the website. If I was asked how does that make me feel, really frustrating. I feel like every day is Groundhog Day. Not only do I live with the condition that I have the same way every day, that doesn't change, but also nothing changes fast enough out there in the NHS, fast enough to help patients. So there's too many people joining our group. Things aren't changing quickly enough. When we talk about specialist rehab for Cauda-Equina patients, they are entitled to equitable services from the spinal cord injury centres. There are 8, I think, around England for treatment, for rehabilitation, bladder and bowels and mobility. This, in fact, doesn't happen. A lot of Cauda-Equina patients are seen in clinics, outpatient clinics, rather than going in as inpatients. They don't have allocated beds in STI centres. And from a personal experience, I was discharged without any rehab at all. So I had to advocate for my own rehab to get myself to bladder and bowel referrals, to get myself to physio, pelvic floor, urodynamics, all these kind of colorectal tests, nerve conduction studies. Part of my job, and it still is at the charity, and our job when people contact us on our information line, is tell these people how to advocate for themselves, because the pathway still doesn't exist. It's the very basic rehab pathway for Cauda-Equina patients in the national pathway, and that needs to be developed and provide holistic pathway and structure for patients, so that every part of their Cauda-Equina dysfunction is sort of rehabilitated and treated.